My daughter and I were visiting a friend at the lake, and there was this old bag hanging on the banister. You could tell it was old leather. It was gorgeous. It was plain as day, the design, and Ellie and I went gaga over it. And so we found the owner and asked her, where'd you get that bag? Because I am notorious for buying bags, use them a couple weeks, throw them in the closets, like they're just not quite right. And simplicity is what I love, and this was about as simple as you can get, not even a pocket inside. And she said that her dad had done a lot of leather work, and he taught her how to use the tools, and she had to help out with a Boy Scout troop, and she didn't want to make a book cover herself, so she cut out a simple pattern for a bag and made that bag. And for a long time she'd been asking me to photograph her daughter, and so I said, okay, I'll photograph your daughter, but you teach me how to make that bag. And so we traded skills. She bought the leather. We went to Tandy and picked out a beautiful piece of leather together, made that bag, and after I used it a couple times, that's when I was like, you know, I want to try to put cross stitch on here. And then I had someone want to buy my bag off my shoulder, and I sold the bag, and I made another bag, and then again sold it to someone else, and it just kind of grew organically. And finally, after about selling 9 bags, a friend said, you know, you could probably make some money at this. I'm like, yeah, because this is really taking too much time. That's when I started getting serious about doing it. And the other thing was my dissatisfaction with digital. You know, I've come to terms with it. It's fine, but I had lost the tactile senses that photography fed. I lost all that process of thinking through how I'm going to shoot this image, how I'm going to rack the camera, and so I was in the process of looking for something that would feed that part of my soul. And I knew it had to be with my hands. And all this is happening, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, this is something I could probably do for the rest of my life. No one will care how old I am. No one will care that I'm not hip anymore. Where in my photo world, it's important to be young and cool and hip, you know. Well, I'm not young anymore. I don't know if I'm cool or hip, but I know that I have limits. So I kind of see this as something I can do forever, you know. My name is Becky Stayner, and I'm a Tandy artisan. I went to school in photography, graduated from Brooks Institute in Santa Barbara. I'm a commercial photographer, and I'm heavily into food for the last 30 years. The only other jobs I've had were just because I had to get a job, not because that's what I wanted to do. My husband's a photojournalist, so we moved a lot for newspapers. So there were little bits of time where I had to do something else. I worked in a department store. I worked at Morton Thiokol, filming and videotaping space shuttle motor firings and missile firings and things. So there have been some stops along the way, but primarily it was food and catalog photography for years. I always like to tell people they dragged me kicking and screaming into the digital world, and I'm still not real happy, but it's okay. It was tough because I was primarily a 4x5 shooter, and when the digital started entering the arena, there really wasn't a good digital back for the 4x5, and there still isn't. You know, it's just way too much information. So I had to learn to shoot without swings and tilts. But now what I love are my clients, but a good part of what I loved about the experience of shooting is gone. Yeah, it's a whole different experience. You used to have people come to set and look at a Polaroid, and they would pass it around and really discern what they were looking at. And then you made decisions and made changes on set and in camera, and you shot it, it went on film and went to the lab. Now on a shoot, we may be emailing 5 people and they don't come on set, and they all pepper in their responses, and you'll never get 5 people to agree on anything if they're not in the same room. So it's a different experience. It's more photo by committee than it used to be. And so it's not as an enjoyable experience as it used to be. But I do still love photography. Figuring out how to shoot something on the 4x5 took a lot of thinking and calculating. And with leather, it like fed that part of my brain creating a bag. How am I gonna make this happen? You know, I see a bag, I see what I want to make, then I have to dissect what I see into the pieces and the sewing, and will this be strong enough? Is it, do we need to make a change in the design so that it'll also be strong? So yeah, it's really fed a part of the brain that was not being fed with digital. With the digital age now, it's not like I do the shoot, I send the film to the lab, pick it up, edit it, and deliver. There's so much time involved with post-process that our clients don't realize. And so, nights and weekends are post-process, so you didn't have time for hobbies. And then I had kids, so yeah, no time. I did nothing with leather other than buy a pair of shoes and a bag, I painted for a while as a hobby. I've always done some hand sewing to some degree, gardening, but no, I didn't work with leather at all until 3.5 years ago. I just picked it up. I mean, I've always loved leather as opposed to fake materials. It was kind of twofold. It isn't just about leather, it's also about handwork and stitching. When I was also a kid, my grandmother was a knitter, my uncle did needlepoint, my grand aunt did needlepoint, my aunt did quilting and crewel work, and my mother sewed clothes. So everybody did something. And then my dad restored furniture. Everybody did something with their hands. You had to learn all those skills growing up in our family. And I loved it, but my favorite was embroidery. And fast forward to now, when I ran across this one old bag that was my inspiration to want to get into leather. A friend taught me how to make that bag, and it was just a plain running stitch, nothing exciting. And I looked at it and I thought, I like this, but I think I could do the cross stitch on this bag. And so the next bag is when I added the X stitch, and then it was just kind of like old days, stitching on. Only I was stitching on leather, which of course is a lot harder material than fabric, but that was kind of it. My challenges since I started Biscuit Leather are too long to get into right now. Well, in the beginning, it was I had no skills, so I had to rely on a lot of people, many trips to Tandy saying, how do I do this? I want to do this. What do I need to do this? Because my background had been sewing on fabric, so it's a different beast. So those were the first challenges, and I would never say that I have so many skills now there are no challenges. That is not true at all. I feel like I learn all the time. But now my challenge is running a business and meeting people's deadlines. And I've come up with a good system, and it's working, but it's still not quite where I want it to be. I use independent contractors to do all the sewing now. And so that's my new challenge, because no one works here with me. There's a lot of logistics and communication and coming along. Yeah, quality control, yeah. And then probably the other challenge, as a small artisan maker, I can't go and buy 50 hides at one time and they're consistently, say all red, 50 hides, the same red. I have to buy, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then I run out and I'm like, I need 2 more of those red hides. Where am I gonna find them? That's a problem. When it comes to marketing and sales, I started out with trunk shows in people's homes, and that was good, and it still is good, but I want to reach a much broader market. So I've been working at trying to identify who are my buyers, and they're artisan markets as opposed to just any kind of fair or market. It has to be high-end because our price point is high, and juried exhibition or juried markets, and shows like equestrian shows in particular. I mean, the horse people love their leather, so we just did the Rolex 3-day event, which is one of the biggest equestrian shows in the world, and it was a great show. Well, I think, it comes down to your vision for what you're doing. Anybody can pick up the skills and copy my bag, but what's my next bag gonna look like? You know, and the next bag, and the next bag. And also it's relationship, you know. I've been fortunate to have a lot of people who, I go to my shows, I meet my people, you know, and we end up talking about other things, and you develop a relationship, and that's part of the process, you know. Then they want to come back, what's the next bag you're gonna make, you know? So it's, you know, it's different for everybody. Well, you start with passion, number one. And I think that's true of anything that you're going to stick with for any length of time. If you don't have the passion, it's going to peter out, you know. So you start with a passion, and you kind of have to have a love of leather, because it's not necessarily easy to work with. It's tough on your hands, but if you love leather, you're going to have a lot of fun working with leather. And it's amazing to like make your own thing. You not walk into the department store and buy what they're trying to sell you off the rack. You get to make what you want. That's what I did. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a period when people still did a lot of handcrafts, and in a family where everyone did do something with their hands. I understand it. I think, and having gone through the film and digital transition, we went from using our hands to do so much work in our lives to now so much is done on a screen, sitting down. And I think this is a rebellion to that process. It's a rebellion. Like, I think we were born with an innate need to work with our hands, with our full body, with our mind. And the computer has taken a lot of tasks away from us that were really rewarding. We may not have realized that they were as rewarding as they are. And so now we have this need and craving to get back to doing something with our hands. And I think that's what's happening. And I think as a result, people are appreciating artisan and handmade, and they're seeing the value and the beauty and the long term of a piece that's made by hand. And I think also they've seen a lot of junk that we've bought and thrown away because it didn't last. I mean, I also grew up when you repaired the radio, you fixed the shovel, you know, you got your dress altered, you didn't go buy a new one. And I think we're getting back to that. You know, people want things to last. And we're also getting into this minimal. We're trying to shrink our footprint, we're trying to shrink our energy use. And in order to do that, that means you have to have less stuff. And so the stuff you have has to be really good. And I think that's where our mindset is heading now. My name is Becky Stayner, and I'm Biscuit Leather Company. We're based in Homewood, Alabama. You can find us on Facebook, Biscuit Leather Company, or you can Google us, Biscuit Leather Company, to our website.